and ensure really you're providing value. And that's what it's all about. I've always wanted to sell something challenging. When you can create that connection, that means you're providing that value regardless of what step in the sales process you're at. And that's just something I always get excited about. And, it's something I love kind of passing on to other people as well.
Lou, welcome to the Kluster Community blog. I'm really excited for this discussion on upskilling reps. But first of all, I'd like to start off with a bit about you. So Lou, what is your story in sales up to this point?
Absolutely. Well, I got started in sales actually, on the technology side. I started out as an account manager. And the important thing there was knowing the platform, understanding how to explain it. So when we had our clients, they could digest it. And then what ended up happening, a lot of the salespeople were taking me with them on their sales call because I understood the platform so well. And then, within a week or two, the CEO was like, you know what, I think you need to make the jump on this. And it was really an easy transition because when you're selling technology, especially in a world where everyone has SaaS, you have to be able to explain it in a way that's easy to digest. And I love that challenge. Depending on who is on the other side of the table, what do you have in your head? That knowledge can enable you to adapt so quickly and pivot and ensure really you're providing value. And that's what it's all about. I've always wanted to sell something challenging for people to maybe understand. It's not such an easy thing. And when you can create that connection, right, that means you're providing that value regardless of what step in the sales process you're at. And that's just something I always get excited about. And, it's something I love kind of passing on to other people as well.
Fantastic. That's a great story. And when did you move into a leadership role in the sales space?
So I would say probably, let's call it 2008 or so, thereabouts.
Okay.
Again, I was very successful as a seller. And then it was just a natural progression, helping new people get onboarded and training them. And then for me, when I started getting more excited about helping other people close deals genuinely, right? That's a tough transition. It's not for everybody, right? But I genuinely was getting happier to help other people across the finish line than if I closed my own deals. And it just kind of progressed from there.
Interesting. So I like that. And I think you're very right. Like a good rep doesn't always make a good manager or a good VP of sales or a good director of sales. So kind of what sorts of personality traits do you think is important to be a sales leader?
Oh, well, I mean, the most important one is just self-awareness, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then obviously empathy is thrown around a lot, but genuinely, do you have an understanding of how that other person is feeling, right? Do you understand their motivations? Do you understand, what is going to help them succeed? And can you put together that plan for them? And it's not one way to do it. Especially I'd say in the last 15 years, all of these ideas of like the challenger method or certain traits and tricks it's like, there's not one way to do it. So as a leader, you need to be open enough and know that you're not complete. You're not the perfect thing in the world. Not everyone can do it my way, right? Nor should they. So to just understand that is, I think, the most important thing, that willingness to listen and know that everyone has their own different path to success. As a leader, it is my job to help get them there. And also vice versa, to be able to hear feedback, right? And give them that transparency, that access. So.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to getting into, the personality traits of an A player and so on. But how important is leadership in the development of a rep? I guess in some ways you can have, a potential rep, but they need that leadership. They need that support and commitment from above. So how much importance do you put on that?
Oh, it's incredibly important. Whether it's talking about sales and closing deals with prospects and potential clients, or it's about training people and just the internal team. If you don't have trust with that communication, if you can't establish trust, right, then nothing is going to work, in my opinion. I think that's really where it all starts, that trust and that willingness to be vulnerable, right? To have the scars. We all have scars of like our sales stories and stuff, and to kind of come across in that way, to be human, really. But if you can't establish trust, whether it's external or internal, it is not going to work as a team.
Brilliant. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I totally agree with you. So if we move on to the individual reps and reps on their own here, what defines an A player in your eyes?
In my eyes, it is someone who is confident in how they are presenting the information, not overconfident, not anything in the excuse me, in the version of arrogance, right? This is more just
Yeah,
you're confident in what you're saying, right? You're there, you are the expert in the room. Their character, right? It is again, this goes back to the trust, right? That creating that type of connection. If you have a strong character people can rely on, they know, okay, not only are you an expert and you clearly know what you're talking about, but you're someone I can trust to have these conversations with and give you my pain points. And you're going to come back to me
yeah,
with something of value. And that ties into the content, right? Are you able to convey content, not based on a script, not based on what your research was, but really in a moment to adapt, right? If you can
yeah,
pivot and you embrace the curveballs that are thrown your way in a sales meeting, right? You embrace that. Those are the key traits. If you're smart, you're willing to be vulnerable, like I said, you're willing to work hard, right? That hunger, that desire to succeed. And again, the motivations can be different, what they define success as. Me as a leader, that's my job to understand that. And if you have all those things together, that is where I've seen the most successful sellers, regardless of what stage they were at when I started working with them, whether they were brand new to sales or someone who's been doing it for 15 years. If you can kind of assemble those traits, that is where people end up being incredibly successful in what we would term as an A player.
interesting. Yeah, I'm interested to get your take on this one as well. So in sales, I mean, how much of it is talent? In sports, I guess talent gets you quite a long way, but in sales, it's kind of different. I don't think many people are naturally talented salespeople. So how much is talent, and how much is just work ethic and mentality and commitment?
Well, I think it's interesting. How many people go to college, go to university to be in sales, right? I don't even know if that's something you can do. So
No.
people end up falling into it. And I love that. That's exactly I was a journalism major. And now, but wait a minute, I'm
Really?
here selling stuff. So I just get the excited about everyone is there for some different kind of reason that is what they've always wanted to do, right? And I think talent is something that is really broadly defined, right? So what's talent for someone? Maybe they have an analytical mind and they like explaining the data, getting into logistics of that, right? That's talent for someone in that particular path. Other people, it's that big energy, that willingness to walk into a room where they don't know anybody and have those conversations and get in there. So that's also a different kind of talent. So I think, it's probably 60% of it is the work ethic, is the
Yeah.
willingness to do the learning. That 40%, again, I define talent as a number of different traits, but if you have that confidence to go in there and figure it out, then I think that's it. So I would go, again, off the top of my head, I'd say it's 60-40 work ethic to talent when you're talking about technology sales professional.
Yeah, I like how you've broken talent down into not necessarily, not a God-given gift, but in other ways. I think that's quite a cool way of putting it, actually. So I'm interested to hear in your experience, A reps, what are the leading motivations? I guess they're all different, but are there some correlations between they all want to be super, super rich, or what have you found?
I think the correlation is there's something that they want to succeed at. They're driven, whether it is to become rich, whether it is to, always win the sales battle, right? Internally to be number one on the board, or whether it's just to go after the biggest whales out there, right? To make
Yeah,
these longer 8-month, 12-month sales cycles and win those. It's that drive. Whatever it is, if you're driven, regardless of what the inspiration for that drive is, that is something that is consistently with the top performers.
awesome. Yeah, I think you're completely right there. Drive is incredibly important, and I think resilience, right? Like
Yep.
resilience in sales is the secret ingredient, because I don't think anybody starts this world, you know, doing really well. It takes resilience and drive, and you're 100% right there.
Well, it's the willingness to enjoy the rejection and learn from
Yeah,
it, right? It's failure. 90% of the time, you're going to get told no to some degree, right?
yeah,
So and fighting through that, right? Understanding those different steps. And again, this is where you're guiding someone down the path, right, of the sales cycle. We have to. This is reinforcing that we're the expert, reinforcing that again, that trust in what we're conveying to them, even if they say no in the beginning, right? Maybe it's cut down to budget. Well, let's not lose because of budget. Do you understand the impact it's going to have on your business if you don't make this decision? Those types of things. And that's where the fun comes in.
yeah, 100%. And what part of it as well do you see it as the fundamentals are good to do consistently. I mean, that's, I guess an A player, there's the fundamentals good. But how much of it is thinking outside the box and trying to find a deal somewhere that maybe other reps wouldn't look? Is that also a part of it?
I think, trying to find deals, not necessarily where other reps don't, but I think trying to understand the blocking and tackling necessary to get a certain deal down, right? And
Yeah,
the willingness to ask for help, right? That's another trait we
that's a
didn't
great
really
point.
talk about so far. Eight
Yeah,
reps. I mean, it's something that I went through myself that, I want to win. I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove myself to everybody. And I fell down. And luckily enough, I had a boss that was willing to let me learn from that experience. And from there, just raise your hand and ask for help. Know when to pull in the troops, know when to go to other departments to help the cause, just have more people in there. That is such a key, right? And I think that is what some people would consider thinking outside the box in a traditional technology sales role is the willingness to go to other people and say, I need help here. And not look at that as a weakness, but looking at that really as a learning opportunity, constantly learning, constantly trying to grow. I think, another trait is the idea that you're not complete as a seller. I'm not complete, right? I'm always looking for opportunities to learn, to add more to my knowledge base. And that only will lead to more success down the line.
I like that you've brought up support there and asking for help. Is that, what you found a very common characteristic even now? Like you get the real high performing reps are always looking for help and always looking for a little edge on certain areas of their sales.
I think depending on the stage they're at, yes, right, in theory, but sometimes they have to learn that, right?
Yeah,
And to get through that, it's also a matter of what's the culture in the company. Is it a forward-thinking culture of sales needs help, or is it a culture where sales is over there and then the back end operations over here, and they're never really talking unless a deal is closed and they have to do some transition of power? I think when you get an organization where everyone is bought into the sales side of things, they all feel some kind of ownership to it. That's where the most successful companies really start from. If you build that culture in the beginning, as you're scaling out the teams, as you're scaling out, clients and revenue, that's embedded in it. And it's a natural progression. You bring someone in, well, here's where you need to go for help to understanding this stuff. And you kind of train it in them. And then wherever they end up going, they bring that as well. So it's kind of like branching out across multiple organizations when you have that right type of setup and culture.
that's a great point. Culture is so important. How, as a sales leader, can you set a healthy sales culture, do you think, Lou?
I think first off is leading by example,
Okay.
right? It is for
Yeah.
me doing the work myself. Joining all the meetings, and again, giving that vulnerable history of I've been there. Like, this is what I've done when I've handled this. How would you handle this? But I think that goes back to establishing trust with a new team, right? It's I'm here. I'm willing to do the work too. Like, we're in this together. I'm very passionate about that. I'm not one that thinks leadership is telling people what to do. I think that leadership is doing it with them, right?
Yeah.
And failing together if need be, right? And learning together. It's something that I believe is so key. And it's not that common, right? At least in my experience, that it's
Okay.
been that way in the technology side, right? I think it's starting to trend more in that direction. I think the idea of servant leadership is becoming a little bit more popular, but what does it actually mean, right? What does that
Yeah.
mean? And what are you doing as an individual to be a part of that, right? So
Interesting. Great point. And if we go down to kind of the metric side of things, the analytical side of things, what metrics do you kind of drive as being really important and ones that you go, right? If a rep gets this, then this is a success.
I mean, really, there's basic ones like just doing the work, making the calls, right? Getting
Yeah.
out there, just actions, activities. I'm a big believer in sales karma, right? If you put in the effort, it will pay off. You might not see it immediately, but it will be there. And I think those actions, those activities, those phone calls, how are you in a meeting? I think, the technologies around now like Gong, where you can actually review a conversation and see what happened and, guide someone where here's where you could have maybe gone a little bit more broad in the, platform feature standpoint, or here's one where you could have focused. You had an opportunity where they asked a question and
Yeah.
stay there, stay with when it's sticky, hammer down that point. So I always look at those types of things. Are they broadening their conversation types? But really it starts with, are you doing the work? Are you responding when you get a question asked, right? Are you looping in more people? to help the cause when it's a more technical question or things along those lines. So if you're doing those actions and those activities, then that is inevitably going to lead to scaling out the pipe, right? And those pipe, the bigger the pipe, more deals come in. You look at your percentage, your close ratio, but it all starts with being able to pick up the phone, send those emails, and understand the content you're putting out there to provide value. So I always monitor that action, those activities.
Yeah, you're so right there. I think all of this, right, it starts with you can come up with some fancy metrics, but ultimately it starts with reaching out. Like that's the fundamental part. You need to make a contact, email, phone, whatever it is. Then you can build on that and look at other metrics, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So how do you compare a B player rep to an A player?
That's a tough one, because I think the B player, I almost feel like I don't like defining them in that way, because it's almost like you're already separating them in a bucket. And then what are their chances of making that jump?
Okay.
Versus we have the top tier. There's a reason they're the top tier, and then everyone else is there. We can get you there to that next step. But I think really it's a lot of times it's stage, it's experience. They haven't had the experience to get there, which is fine. We can work through that. Other times it is stubbornness. It is an unwillingness to adapt. They don't want to hear about any other ways to do things. This is how they've been doing it. It's gotten them to a pretty decent part of their career. They've been successful. So why do I have to change, right? If they're looking at adaptation in a negative way versus, like I said earlier, you're looking at opportunities to adapt and to evolve. I think that's really the biggest separation between A players, the most successful sellers, and those that could be doing fine, right? But they stay kind of at that one tier down.
Great. So how do you make that? How can they make that change? Is it an easy change from being, from a B to an A, or some people just it's not possible to do?
I think it's a mix of both. It's not easy, right? Because again, it's what stage in their career, what is their experience level? Maybe they've done quite well and they're just what they want to stay here. They don't see the need to do something. That's a much more challenging conversation. But again, it's a conversation worth having, and you can get people there, right? Again, that's where I go back to understanding motivations, right? If you can understand an individual's motivation, why they are in sales, why they want to stay where they are, whether it's a company or a stage, then that will help, us as leaders figure out the best path to get them where they should be, right? But really, I think more often than not, at least in my career, in my experience, when you approach it the right way, people want to improve. And that doesn't mean that they were failing. It doesn't mean they were doing something wrong, but you can always do something a little bit better, a little bit more. If you can convey it in that way, then it's not that challenging to get someone to adopt the necessary traits. That, again, a lot of it is willingness to ask for help, or just, the constant learning about other areas in the company, in the technology. If you can just add these little tidbits to it, inevitably you're going to get to that A level.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of that. I'm glad you brought that up. I think, there's always ways to get 1% better, incrementally get better at things, right? And I think sales is one of those professions that if you need to constantly do that throughout your career, right? Would you agree with that? Otherwise, you'll sleep on it for a bit, and then a week later, and that's old news now, and you need to step it up again.
Absolutely. I think I've never wanted to do something the same way over and over again, right? Whether it's the client that's giving you something that now you have to kind of pivot, whatever you expected is completely blown up, right? And then that's a good thing. That's exciting, right? That's where, if you end up becoming scared of a scenario like that, all right, then we need to adjust some things, right? Why is your mindset like that? Why is it, really it goes back to one basic element in selling and in telling the stories and providing value. It's never about us. It's always about them, right? If you're going in with, we do this, we do that, we do this is how we can get you there, then you're wrong. It's about the other side of the table. What do they care about, right? Do the right research, but ask the right questions, right? Pose scenarios in a way that you're getting data back, right? In real time data optimization, right? In those conversations, you hear something and you can adjust and you can pivot. That's really what it's all about. And just no matter what vernacular you're using, no matter how you're communicating, you're constantly reminding yourself it's about them. It's not about us. It's not how we would ideally want to go through a demo. It's not how we would ideally want to present, a situation. It's about how they live every day, where their pain points are. How can we position this in a way that they see the connection, they see the value, and make it fit.